Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain, the Kingdom of Rizia and Ramastoris. In today's episode, we're just starting a request for cooperation from Wellen, option to share information with Wellen Intelligence. Wellen's intelligence force have asked for our full cooperation in their investigation of the Zeal bombing. This means that Rizian security will be obliged to share any information they have found, and vice versa. This is really just... I feel like both of these options are wrong. There's two options. How can they all be wrong? Well, here's why. Cooperating with them means we're giving them our information, which means we're giving them our suspicions on them, why we think they are involved, all sorts of stuff like that. But we might be able to get some information that can help us as well. But if we don't cooperate, that's going to look bad on us. And that's going to hurt our chances of, recuperating things with Wellen. Wellen has already fallen to neutral relations with us. Sure, we're doing a diplomatic mission, but who knows if that's going to work out. This is actually a genuinely difficult decision to make. I think it only makes sense, though, to not cooperate, but man, am I already regretting that decision, despite just making it. Anyways, let's just continue on and just ignore that. Average rent doubling every 18 months. The average rent per square meter in Rizian capital is skyrocketing rapidly, with experts estimating a doubling every 18 months with no sign of slowing down. Not only are prices on the rise, a severe lack of housing stock due to deadly combination of the city's growing population with the market speculation resulted in the average search time for new apartments approaching almost 8 months. That's no fun. Wellen denounced his refusal to cooperate. Yeah. Wessex authorities have called out our country's refusal to cooperate with them on the Zeal bombing investigation a hostile move, signaling a lack of trust and respect for our people. They continue by promising that Wessex Federation shall be successful in finding the culprits, even without our help. Rizian help. Wine exports soar amidst trade surge. Surplus from wine exports boost treasury. Oh. Rizia's vineyards are flourishing with heavy demands for a remarkable surge in wine exports, particularly in Swordland and other Eastern nations. This unexpected boon has created a significant surplus in trade, positively impacting our national budget. Our strategic decision now is how to best allocate the additional resource. Rizia's viticulture will travel across the road. Woo! I'm very happy to see that. Medquiz grapples with rising tourism and trade demands. The government of Medquiz faces new challenges as it becomes the epicenter of Rizia's surging trade exports and tourist arrivals. The influx of visitors, especially from Swordlands and burgeoning wine trade, have brought economic growth, but also concerns over cultural and environmental impacts. The situation is particularly strained in the entertainment districts, where the blend of local tradition and foreign influence is more palpable. As Medquiz navigates these waters, balancing its historic role as a trade hub with its modern identity is proving a complex task. Yeah, but money. Swordish tourists disrupt ancient Topes site. A group of tourists from Swordland cause a disturbance at the ancient resonant excavation site in Topes. The tourists, reportedly ignoring guidelines, have ventured into restricted areas, damaging some recently unearthed artifacts. Local authorities have detained the individuals involved, and the incident has prompted calls for stricter enforcement of heritage site regulations. The city council is considering implementing mandatory guided tours for foreigners to protect the site's integrity and educational value. Alright. We got Swordish tourists, a blessing or a burden. As our wine and whiskey industries flourish, attracting a flood of Swordish tourists, concerns have been raised about their impact on the Valkyries region. While the influx of visitors from Swordland following the lucrative trade and resort deals has undoubtedly boosted our economy, it certainly has, there is growing unease about their sometimes snobbish and arrogant behavior. Local residents and vintners express mixed feelings, appreciating the economic benefits, but wary of the cultural and environmental implications of this newfound attention. Fair enough. Rizia's new exports reach new heights. Wine exports from the Kingdom of Rizia have marked a significant uptick, particularly with Swordland, signaling a strengthened position in the global market. Analysis suggests that this increase is not merely an economic triumph, but a diplomatic one, potentially ushering a new era of regional partnerships. The government's astute trade policies and quality improvements in viniculture have been credited for the success. Woo! Alliance of Nations South Marcopa session. Alright. Here we go. It was a rainy day in Kairat, one of only a handful the island experienced per year. The sound of falling drops on the Alliance of Nations dome made for an unexpected, soothing backdrop. Drip, 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 to what I could tell was going to be a tense session. I sat with Lorinto and the rest of the Rizian delegation in the half-full assembly hall. Today's session was to focus on South Marcopa only. Again, the room, I could see representatives and leaders from Wellen, Morella, Dirtia, and Lespia. Duke Axel Rienhart and Preciso Alvarez entered late, deep in conversation. They nodded at each other and took seats with their respective delegations. I wonder what they were talking about. They clearly plan to put up a united front. It'll be hard to argue against them. Are you well, Your Majesty? Your father always had a case of nerves before these sessions. I'm not surprised. One more royal duty that I couldn't handle. We turned our attention to the front of the room as President Nines called the meeting to order. This was a special session. On the opening remarks were kept short. Before I knew it was time for the individual leaders of South Marcopa to present their speeches, Prime Minister Alma Satana strode up to the podium. She had to lower the microphone to reach it. Big trouble in a small package. Let's hear what she has to say before passing judgment. The Morellan leader greeted the assembly. Her voice had a melodic lilt to it, and I associated with Quinal. Mr. President, esteemed leaders and distinguishing guests, it is my honor to speak on these hallowed halls for the first time. I come before you as a representative of the New Morella, a country committed to breaking free from the shackles of our oppressive past. A country that is now truly aligned with Aeon values of justice, solidarity, and human dignity, and one that is proud to build bridges with those that share our vision of a more equal society. She nodded towards the upper seats of the assembly room, looked behind me to see Vagslandian Chancellor Emmerich Hegel applauding furiously. Lorinto, I thought this was a South Marcopa session. Chancellor Hegel is not on the speaking platform. You must have flown to Kairat solely to support Madam Prime Minister. It is time to transition for Morella, but as we redefine our principles and our partnerships, one fact becomes abundantly clear. We can no longer abide the senseless exploitation of our land, people, and resources. Since this gold makes plenty of sense to me. This agreement her predecessor signed was airtight. She'll need a lot of international backing to get out of it. Or, no, the agreement her predecessor signed was airtight. She'll need a lot of international backing to get out of it. For too long, our so-called partners in the Meftian International Trade Zone have dug the ground out from under us. We've allowed them to ravage our soil and abuse our workers while reaping more than their fair share of profits. They send security forces to guard their gold, yet leave the rest of Morella to the mercy of the dirty and terrorists. Meanwhile, the shocking lack of mining regulations in countries such as Rizia shows they are no less careless at home than abroad. Why is she naming us? What about the corruption in Lespian industries? Morellan international profile isn't large enough to go after a country of Lespia's stature yet. Morella's international profile isn't large enough to go after a country of Lespia's stature yet. Morella calls on the Alliance Nation to recognize our human rights struggles, and to accept that if the Meftium is continue, any wealth it generates must be reinvested in the Morellan people. Brava, Madam Prime Minister. Chancellor Hegel was standing now. The other Aeon guests turned their heads in his direction. As fellow stewards of the International Trade Zone and fellow soldiers in the fight against imperialism, they should advise and support Morella in its journey. Are you sure that you can't get her into the CSP? Not until Morella improves its military, which may be the reason for its sudden interest in nationalization. Hegel sat back down, and Nines motioned for Prime Minister Sultana to continue. I thank all of you for your attention today, and look forward to forging a brighter future for the people of South Marcopa. All of them. All of them. Lorenzo turned to me as the Morellan Prime Minister wrapped up her speech and returned to her seat. It seems the trade zone is going to be more of a sticking point than I thought. I just hope she doesn't expect me to deal with Dirty on her behalf. Speaking of which, Supreme Wiseman Jorga Asmal stepped onto the stage, dressed in a ceremonial robe of silver trim. Before speaking, he waved his hand in the air 6 times, representing the 6 pillars of Galcanism. I'm surprised he flew out here. Dirty Supreme Wiseman normally refrains from speaking in public. Whatever he has to say must be important. I admit, I'm very curious. The Supreme Wiseman spoke in a deep baritone. Dear great and powerful leaders of South Marcopa, in the name of Prophet Warwick, I salute you all. I am humble enough to know that we men alone cannot decide the fate of a continent, not without God's guidance. And it is God who has guided me here today. We are one of the few nations brave enough to let themselves be ruled by his law, but we are also a country like any other. Yet our attempts to find common ground with our neighbors have been rebuffed over and over, solely on account of our beliefs. I looked over at where Alma Satana was sitting. She was openly scowling. The PM of Morella accuses us of violating her borders. It was not so long ago that we were one country. Because of arbitrary lines that have been drawn, my people can no longer visit the graves of their ancestors or the shrines where they once worshipped. Every single one of us, Sturdia, Morella, Rizia, Wellen, we all have different views, but we all united by the divine path of Saint Warwick. And it is my humble request that we Dirtians be able to follow the path as we have for centuries. He sounds reasonable enough. But does what he's saying justify the violent acts? Committed by the Durdian pilgrims? On that note, concerns have been raised about the missile tests my countries have been conducting. Our aim has only ever been to protect our people and way of life. It is God's will that we use this technology not for evil, but to contribute to global security and stability. Alma Satana started laughing. Shh. Excuse me. I thought this was a meeting of nations, not a sermon. Asmal put his hands on the podium. How far have we fallen? That the only country in South Marcopa where the pillars of nerdy still stands tall is treated as a laughingstock. You all speak of superpowers, but I know there's only one superpower we need to worry about. He pointed upwards. The sooner our nations come together under him, the sooner true peace and prosperity can be realized. Supreme Wiseman Esmal made the pillar sign again as he exited the stage. Halita. A man of strong faith indeed, but faith alone won't be able to solve his country's problems. Oh, but now it's time for the real heavy artillery. He gestured to the aide to begin taking notes as President Nines announced Victor Smolik. There were some whispers from within the room as Wellen's president stepped up to the podium. He silenced them with a theatrical shushing motion, then continued. Dear fellow leaders, I wish I could say I was happy to be here, standing as one of the 6 proud nations of South Marcopa, and yet I feel only sorrow. Sorry that our magnificent region has let itself be torn apart by forces greater than ourselves. I speak, of course, of Arcacia and Rumburg. Conveniently leaving out Inayagratana. Yes, he does. It doesn't count if the superpowers his patron. Convinced of the ideas that might makes right, they sow discord among us in order to strengthen themselves, and Wellen, poor war-torn Wellen, must pay the highest price. Few among you can deny ATO's involvement in the Wellen Civil War, or Rumburg's shipment of arms to the British separatist movement. Nobody in the hall said a word. Victor looked up at me directly. It is my everlasting regret that when Wellen was at its weakest, our direct neighbors opted for an alliance with a nation that has sought to harm us at every turn. I do not blame the great kingdom of Rizia for its decision, but neither can I ignore that for the past 20 years, Rumburg has maintained a presence to both our north and south. In light of that, the Rizian government failure to denounce the perpetrators of the Zeal bombing, the most heinous terrorist attack to occur in Wellen since the Civil War, concerns me greatly, especially since the government agencies investigating this incident seem more interested in pinning the blame on Wellen than uncovering the truth. What is to stop such violence from reoccurring? What will happen to the Wessex who have made Zeal their home once Rizia, and by proxy Rumburg, regains control of the region? I am a man who respects the rule of law, yet I cannot put my country's people at risk by abandoning the territory while these questions still hang in the air. I stay still and kept listening. This is why I've decided to invoke the AN Threat Mitigation Protocol for treaty obligations to delay the return of Zeal until the risk is neutralized. Gasps and murmurs rippled throughout the assembly. I felt many pairs of eyes on me. I didn't say anything. This is unprecedented, Your Majesty. No nation has invoked the protocol since the signing of the AN Charter nearly a century ago. The murmurs in the room were growing louder. President Nine banged a gavel. If I may continue, it is not my intention to keep custody of the Zeal region forever. The sooner that safety and security are restored, the sooner we may begin preparation for an orderly transition. I hope for swift cooperation from His Majesty King Ramus and my fellow South Marcopan nations. Together we are strong. He raised his arms in expectation of applause. None came. None of our neighbors is openly taking Wellen's side. That bodes well for us. Victor shook his head and left the stage. I politely applauded as he walked away. I'll get in touch with Wellen's foreign minister as soon as we're back home. There may still be a way to straighten things out. Now let's see if Prime Minister Alvarez has any words on the subject. Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez was next. He straightened his tie as he approached the microphone. Mr. President, may I just start by voicing my unwavering support for this fine organization, the role that it plays. Were it not for the Alliance of Nations, there would be no way to stop our country's petty quarrels from devouring the world, which, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely what's in danger of happening today. The nation of Lespia is deeply concerned about the deployment of Rizian naval forces around the Arias gas field in the Archean Sea. The use of military force to occupy a disputed territory goes directly against the AN's most cherished principles. It is essential that Rizia respect the legal process and accept the results of the arbitration, whatever they may be. Such blatant use of intimidation tactics shows that the kingdom has no intention of doing so. We stand ready to aid in the peaceful settlement of this dispute, and we beg of the AN to not let Rizia's show of force affect its judgment. For our part, it is clear that due to the small size and limited habitability of the Rizian island, Calabas, the Grand Duchy of Pales has a greater claim to the field than the Kingdom of Rizia. Should I say something, Mr. Escobil? I don't see the point, but if you like. Marlarky! Ooh, I have Hegel? Hegel! Hey, Emmerich Hegel, hey! Hey, you disagree? I'll let him take my battles for me then. That's a superpower on my side. I'm gonna let him fight my battles. Go for it, dude. Everyone turned to look at the Vaxlandian Chancellor. Hegel bowed his head. Forgive my ill-timed cough. I have a terrible cold today. Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. Gave me a significant look, then sat back in his chair. That brings me to another point I was going to make today. I speak, of course, of the conspiracy to nationalize the MEF-Team International Trade Zone. Chancellor Hagel stood up again. Alvarez ignored him. Let us not for 1 second believe that Morella is acting of its own accord. The long arm of the Cortanan Security Pact is behind this. By giving in to Prime Minister Taltana's demands, the nations of Lespia and Rizia would be effectively paying to increase United Cortana's sphere of influence. I know I am not alone in wanting to avoid these disastrous consequences. He looked at the Pelesian delegation. Reinhardt and the ministers politely applauded. I remind Morella and Vaxlin that the Alliance of Nations is watching, as is the ATO. Any attempt to seize the International Trade Zone by unlawful means will be met with retaliation. That will be all. Nothing about Wellen. It is not in Lespia's interest to take sides on Zil, for now. Looks like Pales is next. Duke Reinhardt stepped up to the podium. With the spotlight on the Pelesian leader, I could see that he had stubble on his chin and dark circles under his eyes. I hope he doesn't make a fool of himself up there. It's his first day in address, and he is quite inexperienced. Duke Reinhardt cleared his throat and shuffled a few papers around. As the leader of the youngest nation in southern Recopa, I am humbled to be in this great hall. I am fully aware that everyone else in the room has spent their lives preparing to be in power, whereas me, let's just say that calling me a deity would be generous. I joined in. But just because I'm inexperienced does not mean I am naive. The Kingdom of Rizia has deployed a naval fleet to the waters of the Grand Duchy, supposedly in self-defense. And we know what happened the last time Rizia sent military units to Pales. On multiple occasions, His Majesty King Ramus has indicated that he considers Rizia's loss of Pales to be unfinished business. The incident is... to be fair, I have. That's not a lie. Whoops. The incident in Wellen has proven the links to which the dangerous new monarchs will go. In this context, it is vital that my emerging nation assert its sovereignty. We hope the Alliance Nations Arbitrary Committee sees through the kingdom's poorly justified infringement of our maritime borders, and we invite our other colleagues in the esteemed organization to engage with us as equals, irrespective of the way our neighbors have treated us. Alvarez rose to his feet. Well said, Your Grace. I didn't speak up. There is no I don't need to... Good, Your Majesty. Don't play the aggressor. Rest assured that we will resist any further attempts to bully us into submission, and furthermore, criminal! Duke Reinhardt looked shaken by the interjection. That didn't sound like a cough, Chancellor. No. I cannot stay silent while you make your entitled demands. Your family used Pale as a base to pillage the Zian continent. Everything you had, you stole from someone else. And rather than give it back when the revolution forced your hand, you begged the capitalist swine of Lespia to help you hold on to your ill-gotten gains. I beg your pardon, Chancellor Hagel, but I'm not responsible for my father's sins. But you're happy to profit from them, aren't you? Up there in your glass castle, I'll tell you, Duke Reinhardt, the clacks are beginning to show. I'm just gonna... I applaud loudly. I meant just a polite applaud. But I guess I'll applaud loudly, sure. I didn't realize the Chancellor harbored such lingering resentment over Pales. I wonder if we can use it to our advantage. Oh, I'm thinking the same thing. 100%. President Nines, this man is abusing his guest privileges. Can he be removed? After a short back and forth, President Nines issued the Chancellor a stern warning. He glared out from his seat as Duke Reinhardt finished his speech. He tapped on the mic nervously. I don't know if this will mess up the recording, but I actually tapped on my mic. That might mess up the sound, but oh well. I can't stop just keeping with actually what's happening, you know? He tapped on the mic nervously. I see the Chancellor is still resentful. The people of Pales chose the firm leadership of the Reinhardt family over the chaos of the revolution. Yes, the Grand Duchy aided in the colonist aims of the Valgos Empire, but like Vagslan, we are ready to put the past behind us and look towards the future. We simply have a different vision. Pales may not yet truly earned its spot in the Assembly, but it is my hope that it will. His voice had regained its full confidence now, and any nation that attempts to stop us from doing so will be met with a strong and resolute response. He rushed back to his seat as chatter erupted from the rest of the assembly. It's certainly an eventful session, Your Majesty. I hope you're ready for your speech. I'm ready as I'll ever be. I took a deep breath as President Nines announced my name. Laurento gave me a quick smile of encouragement as I left my seat. I stepped up to the podium as to a smattering of applause. The delegates from Wellen and Pales stayed poignantly silent. Most respectable leaders of Southern Recopa, my monarchical forebears instilled in me a great respect for this institution and its values. As we have seen over and over throughout history, our nations can accomplish much more together than we can apart. Which is why I'm so saddened by the division plaguing South Recopa. I'm aware that the comments made by President Victor Smalk early in the session demand a response from me. The AN threat mitigation protocol can only be invoked under extreme circumstances. In my opinion, the Zeal incident is not one of them. The bombing was a tragedy. However, my kingdom has taken the necessary steps to ensure it will not be repeated. The people of Zeal yearn for their home. Who is Wellen to deny it to them? We are not fighting for a sliver of Rizia. We are fighting for the future of South Recopa. Supreme Wiseman Asmal. One's occupation of Zeal represents invasion of Dasnurity into the lands of state work. Jordia must not condemn it. Jordia Asmal applauded loudly. His face remained impassive. Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear. Moving on. I cannot ignore the presence of Chancellor Hegel and his newfound interest in our neighbor. I saw Hegel lean forward in his seat intentionally. I may not share Morella's worldview, but yet I believe our citizens' struggles are one and the same. As Morella's longtime allies, we are prepared to offer what assistance we can in building a more equitable midst. Prime Minister Salatana began applauding. Hegel looked pleasantly surprised. I'm not opposed to reopening trade zone negotiations, as long as Rizia continues to be able to provide for its citizens. Prime Minister Alvarez and Lespian delegations were speaking in worried whispers. President Nines again gestured for silence, then motioned for me to continue. In the same spirit of cooperation, I believe a compromise can be reached regarding Dirty's religious travelers. Their rights to their sacred sites should not be ignored, but neither should the violent methods they have employed in the past. Scattered applause came from across the assembly hall. Finally, a word regarding Pales. Duke Rienhart has said he wants other nations to engage with Pales as an equal. That is exactly what Rizia is doing. My kingdom is not even asking for ownership of the entire territory in question, only our rightful half. I'm convinced that a peaceful compromise can be reached with the AN's help. Our intelligence services submitted concrete proof of Pales cooperating with lesbian energy executives. Their lack of transparency should concern us all. Of course, we will respect the arbitration committee's ruling, as long as it is fair. Of course, I sincerely hope we will not be forced to use the fleet that we have deployed to the field. Chancellor Hegel, I was inspired by your courage in confronting the Lesbian and Pelesian delegation today. I paused to look at Hegel. His face didn't give anything away. I'm trying to use that in. Maybe I can... We have more in common than either of us suspected. Could you ever envision lending your support to a monarchy? The Chancellor's expression stayed the same. He nodded. Next to me, Lorento's jaw was hanging open in disbelief. Hey, Lorento! It's good! He just nodded! He just said he'd be willing to support us, potentially. Let's see if we can get this rolling. This could help. This could save us a lot. This could help us a lot in just getting things done. This is such a risky thing. A monarchy should not be working with a communist nation. That doesn't work. But I'm gonna do it. I don't care. We're gonna make this work. We're gonna make it work, everyone. You understand? President 9 motioned to the clock. My speech had gone over its runtime. I will conclude with these words. President Smolik was wrong. It is not the superpowers who are tearing us apart. We are doing it to ourselves. But I hold out hope that we may find our way back to each other. Thank you. I sat down, and aide handed me a glass of water. Well done, Your Majesty. Your decision to appeal to Vagzlin was interesting. It'll take a while to digest the ramifications. Let's update on all this once we're back in Rizia. Yeah, it's gonna have some heavy ramifications, but I'm taking the risk. Oh, that could turn out so bad. That's another action that's like, I'm so worried it's gonna turn out horribly right after I do it. But sometimes you gotta do a choice like that. And by that I mean, like, I've done it like 8 times. Filing back out of the assembly hall, I noticed the sound of rain on the dome had stopped. Another sunny day in Constantium. Alright. Okay, well, I actually think we're not even going to look at what happened in the news. We're going to save that for next time to get a bit of an idea, as a bit of a recap for what happened this time. And I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.